Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of the virtual wax seal workshop. Today we're going to be going over the more advanced techniques of wax seal making. So we're going to have a lot of fun. And then just make sure to stay muted. Unless you have a question, you can always ask your question, or you can drop your questions in the comments and I'll try to just keep an eye on that as well. Also, we're doing a fun little giveaway. There's a little wax seal kit that I put together. So if you share a photo of you watching the workshop or the seals you make or the notes you take or anything to do with the workshop, post it to your stories on Facebook or Instagram and tag me, and then you'll be entered to win that, and I'll answer. I'll announce the winner tomorrow. And Deanna had another question about leveling out the areas over the seals. So we're going to go over any questions you guys had from yesterday. We'll talk about that as we go through this workshop. And so I'm going to switch my camera around really quick so you guys can see my hands. Okay, so let me move over here. And I'm going to quickly write down the questions we had. So we had about flattening for strings and how much wax. Okay, I'm going to answer those questions, but not quite yet. So the very first thing that I'm going to do, we're going to be doing hot glue seals first. So I have my spoon and everything here, but I actually need to clean it out. So if this ever happens to you where you leave the wax in, it's totally fine. All you have to do is remelt it and it'll work again. So I'm going to get it remelting so that I can clean it out for later. But for the hot glue wax seals, I think these are the most popular seals that I make. Everyone loves them, and I do too because they're so pretty. So what I'm using here is hot glue sticks, and these are AdTech crystal clear hot glue sticks. And I sell these on my website and I buy them in bulk, but you can also find these on Amazon if you just want to buy a bag. They come in a bag of 50. So you could get those if you're going to be making a bunch. You could just buy them on Amazon, and that's quick and easy. If you're living somewhere that doesn't have this specific brand, here I have a bag. This one was from Amazon. So this is the bag. But the most important thing here is crystal clear. So even if it's not this brand, if you can find a hot glue gun or hot glue sticks that have crystal clear in the name, it should still work really well and not have that kind of yellowish tint. So I'm using that, and I'm going to switch my glue gun down to low. If you're having trouble getting the glue to melt, you can switch it to high to get it going and then switch it back to low. Being on high just introduces more bubbles. So that's why we keep it on low. So I have that going and it's been heating up for a few minutes. The other tools that you're going to need is paper. So this is just paper I got at Joann's. That's the brand of it. But I just look for paper that has small flowers in it, because when we actually make these seals, we want to be able to actually see what they are like in the background. If the flower is too big, you can't really tell what it is, and that can still be pretty, but it will just be more color. So I always look for just small florals, and you'll be surprised because sometimes I'll choose papers that I'm like, I don't know how good this is going to turn out, but then once I actually do it, I'm like, oh wow, that turned out really cute. So what's the word? I can't think of the word, but just like open to maybe some floral patterns that you might not normally choose, because they might turn out really beautiful with wax seals. So you're going to need some paper. This is cardstock thickness. So you want it to just be thick enough that you can punch through it. So this is a 1-inch circle punch. I got this one from Hobby Lobby, and whoever wins the giveaway, I'm going to include one of these in it. So the first thing that you're going to do is just punch some circles. So I'm just going to do a few. So then these will be the ones that we make our seals with. And the most important thing with making hot glue wax seals is that your stamps be cold. So about 10 minutes ago, I put all these on this ice pack, and you can see they're getting a little bit of condensation, and that's okay. I'm not worried about that, but I need this metal to be cold so that when it hits the glue, it's not going to stick. If you don't do this, the stamps will stick to the glue and you'll have a hard time getting them off. If you did do that, what you could do is put this stamp, if you have glue stuck, put the stamp and the glue in the freezer, and that should help get it off a little bit easier. So that these are all on ice, and I'm going to move it out of the camera again, but just don't forget these are super cold. So don't forget that step. I get people that message me all the time and they're like, I can't, this glue stuck to my stamp. And it's like, you just got to put it in the ice pack and then it will work great. Okay. So what I just did is I just have a kitchen towel right here. And so sometimes I'll dry off all the sides, but usually I just like wipe off the bottom because I don't want any water to be, or condensation to be on the stamp when I'm pressing it into the glue. So I'm going to take my glue, it's nice and warm, and I'm just going to squeeze, and I'm going to need another glue stick here. There we go. And that's about how much I need. And I didn't quite get it centered. Well, let me press this one and I'm going to zoom in my camera so you guys can see a little better. Let me put my camera a little bit closer. There, that will be a little better. Okay, let's do another one. Okay. So my glue gun is like, sometimes it comes out well and sometimes not so much. So this one's not coming out as well, but that's about how much of the hot glue that I need. And I just take my cold stamp and I'm just going to put it right in the middle. And before it totally dries, I can move it to be right over the circle. Let's do another one. Colts, we have a couple questions. Let me do one more. So the beauty that this is clear, so you're pressing and then you're going to reposition so it's right over the circle and then you can let go. And it takes about 20 seconds for this to cool. Okay, Jeanette asked if a cold stamp technique is only for glue. So most often for glue, but if you're making like 100 wax seals and you're only using one stamp, then I would also put it on an ice pack or something so that it doesn't take you as long, because if the metal's hot, then the seal's going to be hot. Like the seal's going to get stuck to it. So I'd make like 3, put this back on the ice pack, let it cool down, and then make more after that. But if you're just making a couple with one stamp, you wouldn't need to put the ice on it. I'm going to pour this little guy. I think I got it too hot. I just want to use up that wax in the spoon so we can use it in a little bit. So you're going to know when it's done when it comes off the paper, and then you can just pull it off. So it usually comes off pretty well. I have noticed that stamps that have more surface area that are blank tend to stick more, like how that one, did you hear how it kind of stuck when I pulled it off? See if these ones will do it. Where this one just kind of came off a little bit easier. This one has more blank space on it, so it's going to stick a little bit more. So kind of depending on your design, that kind of makes it stick a little bit too. Let's pull this one off. And that one just came off really easy. So that's like the ideal, is it just pulls right off. And sometimes if your stamp isn't cold enough, it'll just kind of stick a little bit to it as well. The other thing that I forgot to mention is the type of stamp you choose to do this with. So let's see if we can tell with these two. This one has a deeper impression versus this one has a more shallow impression. And we want to go with deeper impressions on the seals because we have to color it with gold. And so if it's barely, if the design's like barely sticking up, it's going to be hard to color it without getting gold everywhere that you're not supposed to be getting it. So always try to do this with stamps that have a deep impression when you're making these hot glue seals. So we got a couple more questions. Let me go back up to Kayla. She says, when using glue guns and switching colors, mine melt together a lot. So you mentioned use a clear glue stick in between to clean it out. Yes, and does it mix with the wax? It does mix. So you'd have this one, say that was purple, and then you're cleaning it out with this, and the next one's going to be this. You'll have like 2 squeezes that are going to be mixed, or maybe 3, and then it will just be the second color you put in. So it'll just push out all the glue and you'll be back to sealing wax. And Danette said that she purchased a wax seal kit from Amazon, and it included a cooling disc to place the stamp that I keep frozen in the freezer. That's awesome. Yeah, so I guess you can get kits that have that part included. That's great. Okay, so let me just make one more here, and then I'm gonna show you how to add the gold, or how I do that. So again, I'm taking a cold stamp. You can see it has the condensation on it, but I usually, honestly, what I'm doing when I'm making these, I like wipe it on my hand to get that condensation off, and then I just put it in. I don't know if that's weird or not, but it works. Okay, so the last step on these is adding the gold. So this is a Krylon gold leafing pen, and someone else had asked this question about, oh, it was in an email that I got today. Someone had asked, they said they got some gold or some pens on Amazon, but it just rubs off the seals. And that has been my experience too, that most of the pens that I get, they look really beautiful, but then you touch it and then it's all over your finger and it's not there. So this is an oil-based paint marker, so it is permanent after it's totally like dried. So you have to let it dry the full amount of time, and then it's not going to rub off. Like, you can touch it and it's not going anywhere. Like these ones, you can see I can touch it and nothing's happening, and you get pretty good coverage. Like, it's pretty gold and pretty thick, which is really nice. One thing I did notice the other day with these, I'll see if I can do it on this paper, is I stacked a bunch of them. So if I'm like rubbing it on this paper, you can see how it's kind of coming off. What I had done was I had put a bunch of these on white envelopes and I stacked them together, and then I left them there. And when I came back, I noticed some of them had this marking, and it was because they were stacked on top of each other. So if you do end up using this, just know that it can transfer onto like paper if you like rub it hard. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let me show you how I do the gold. That one came off really easy. So these ones, you have to shake them up. And how I usually do it is I'll try to press down until I get kind of a puddle coming out, so that I know that the like tip, like this. So I try to get it coming out like that much. And then I'll take my seal and I'll hold my thumb and pointer finger, and I'm going to do the rim first. So I'm going to go around the top, and then I do the side, and then I turn it. And I go all the way around. A lot of people don't get the sides, but I think it looks a lot nicer if you get the whole thing. So then from there, I would set it down in a place just to dry. And I would just leave it there and not touch it. And it takes about 20 minutes or so for it to dry. So I usually do a bunch of them like that, and I'll leave it, and then I'll come back. And then when I'm doing the center part, something that I've noticed is if you get too, you know how I pressed out all of the ink, so I would do all of the rims first because you need a lot of ink flow. But when I start doing the inside, I don't want as much ink flow, because if you'll notice, this has a lot of ink flow right now, and I'm putting it on, and I don't know if you can tell, I'm trying to get this to focus. Focused. You can see there's like kind of an excess amount of the gold, and I don't want that. So what I would do is kind of dry it off a little bit to not have as much. And then try it again. But even here, there's too much flow happening. So I'd want to finish the rims first, then go back to this, or just be really careful. So it still worked, but it's just like a little too much flow, so it's filling up some areas that you don't necessarily want to be filled. So that's a little bit about that. So we have a couple questions. Melissa says, are the glue seals to be adhered with an adhesive sticker generally, Or would a customer use glue to apply it to an invitation? You could do either. So we talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I have these adhesives. So what I would do is I just take one of these guys into one that was totally dry, then I would just put this on. So when people buy it from my shop, this is how they get it. So then they just have to take this backing off and then it will stick onto whatever they're putting it on. But you could totally pour, I think it would be harder. I don't think, oh, I did bring an envelope. Okay, so this isn't a hot glue, but the thing that's hard about this is once you pour it, if it's on the envelope, it's going to be hard to color this without and get the edge without accidentally getting the envelope. So you just want to be aware of that. So the times I have put the hot glue right onto an envelope, I only colored the design. I didn't color, I left the outside clear. So that would just be something to be aware of, that it might be kind of hard to color that without messing up and getting it on your envelope too. Christine said, what about Copic markers for the wax seals? Would that work? I have not used those. I have used, so I know these work, and Deco Color pens work too. So those are the only two that I've found that are more permanent. The other ones I've used, they work and they look pretty, but as soon as you touch them, then they just start rubbing off on your finger, you know? So I haven't tried the Copic markers yet, so that I can't answer that one. But if you try them, let me know if they do work. Okay, are there any other questions? Oh, one thing that just happened that I'll show you that not to be surprised about is hot glue seals are sticky because the hot glue is sticky. You can see they'll get stuck together. So that's another reason why it's good to add the gold, so that you don't have a bunch of seals like all blobbed up and getting sticky. The gold around the rim kind of prevents them from being sticky anymore. And that's not something that happens with regular wax seals. And the other thing to mention too is once you add, when choosing paper, this was the thing I forgot to mention. So when you're feeling like the weight of these seals, sealing wax is heavier than hot glue, and so it has like a nicer feel, just more substantial. And so I like to choose papers that are thicker because it adds a little bit more of that weight, so then it feels more like a real wax seal versus it's not a wax seal, it's a hot glue seal. And then also adding the gold seems to add like a little bit, I don't know if it's weight, but it just makes it feel more substantial, so it's like a real wax seal. Okay. Let me know if there's any other questions on these. I'm going to show you, while we've got the hot glue going, I'm going to show you how to make a wreath. So this was something, that's how that one turned out. That's cute. And now I'm back to where this is not wetted, not hot again. Okay, so let me clean this up and then let me show you how to make a little wreath. So this is something I did at Christmas time, and I put it on a gift and it turned out really cute. And so I'm just going to show you the process of making this. So if you want to try it, I only made a couple for Christmas time, but when I was making them, I was like, man, this could be so cute any time of year to put on a little gift. So what you'll want to do, oh, I just thought of one more thing that I want to mention. This circle punch is 1 inch and these stamps are 1 inch. So I also have a smaller little circle punch that's this close to this size of the minis. And so just whatever size stamp you have, you want to go with the same circle punch size. And that also reminded me of the one other thing I was going to tell you. Sorry, there's just so many things. I just don't want to forget anything important. Is okay, how do you make one of these hot glue seals if you don't have a circle? So let me show you with this one. So this one is an oval, and I made some of these. I posted these just the other day, but let me show you. So if you don't, say you have this shape and you don't have a circle punch, or even if you have like a regular circle one, but you don't want to get the punch, you can still make these. So what you'll do is you'll just pour the glue just directly onto the paper. And this one I'm pouring in kind of an oval shape because my stamp is an oval shape. And then I'll just press it in. And then we'll let it cool, and I'm going to grab my scissors. And what we're going to do is we're just going to cut around it. And that's how we would get it out. But we have a couple questions. Is there wax sticks that are better than others? Asked Julie. I was talking about this yesterday, and I think a lot of the stuff that you're going to find on Amazon, there's a company called UniQ. My stuff, a lot of it's just made overseas. So it's like the same recipe of wax. It's just the different color options you're getting. So, yeah, there is a company called Artisaire that makes their own wax sticks with their own formula. And I have noticed their wax is different to work with, not in a good or bad way. Like, I don't feel like it's better per se. It's just different because they're using a different ingredients. But yeah, I think, like, especially if you're just getting started, I would just buy a huge bag on Amazon. You know, they're like $10 and you get like, I don't know, maybe they're more than $10. They might be $15 and you're getting like 30 wax sticks of all colors. And then you can play. I mean, I would love to have you buy from my shop too, but I'm just saying, like, if you're just getting started and you don't want to spend a ton of money, that's an option. Melissa said, probably a silly question, but are there sticks that go in a glue gun, or do the sticks have to be melted in the spoon warmer? Okay, so yeah, the sealing wax sticks come like this. So they're like a glue stick, and then there's also beads that go in the spoon that look like this. You can cut these up and put them in the spoon if you want, but I usually just use beads in the spoon and the sticks in the glue gun. Artisaire, let me put that company name. Okay, and there was another question about telling the depth if you're buying online. And I mean, that's kind of hard to tell just by looking. So I'm trying to think. Artisaire always does really shallow engravings on theirs. But otherwise, I don't have a good tip for how to tell if you're just looking online. You just have to try to see if you can see any depth versus not as much. That's not a good answer. Do you know if there are other pens out there with smaller tips to get some of the fine details? Yeah, so the Deco Color, let me type that in too. Deco Color paint pens, they have gold and silver and all that, and they have like an extra fine tip and fine tip ones. So those ones work great too, where they have a more permanent. They're more permanent, but they're smaller tips. I will say it is hard to color the rim with the smaller tip though. So from here, then we're just going to cut it, and you're just going to get as close as you can and almost move the paper back a little bit and just work your way around. And I don't think I'm going to cut all of that for the sake of time, but you can see how that turned out. And then the thing that's nice about these ones, when we punch the circle, this part is just left clear. That's just clear, so there's nothing left there. But this one, the paper goes all the way to the edge, so it's kind of a pretty effect. This is how it ended up being finished with the gold. It has a really pretty effect because the whole rim of the seal has that color in the background. So that can be a fun option if you have a uniquely shaped stamp, or even for the circle stamps too. Okay. Let me show you this wreath thing. I wanted to show you how to make it on a different one real quick. So let me grab a couple of these little stamps. Okay, so to make a wreath, what you would do is first you would I'm just pouring right on the parchment paper. And I'm just going to press that in. And then I'm going to do a little one with this little mini stamp that's been on the ice pack. And I think I'm going to make one more, and then we'll start connecting. So these could be just hot glue, or I'd made some last Christmas that had little flowers in them, and I used blank stamps. Let's see if this one's, yeah. So that was pretty quick, like they do dry pretty quickly. Okay, so we take that one, So we have a few of these done already. So then what we can do, we'd make one more, and this is going to be the connector seal. So I mean, you can do this with hot glue, but you could do it with any type of glue. And I'm going to make sure they're kind of all in this right direction. And then I'm going to just stick it next to it while it's still hot. And then let that cool. So then I could do one more. I need to wait a second for this to cool. Maybe I'll make one more like this. I have noticed with this glue gun, I have to do a bunch of squeezes to get a little bit of glue out, where it doesn't do that with the sealing wax. So I'm not sure what the difference is there, but okay. So then this one's cool, so I could pull it off, so then it's connected. So you would just continue to do that. I'll do one more. I'm not going to complete the whole wreath, because you guys can get the idea just from this, but I feel like there's lots of like opportunity with this, or like different things you could do that could be really fun with this type of idea of connecting the seals. Then we'll do two more like that. This one might be more ovally shaped. And then once it is dry, then you can take the pen, which I don't know. Oh, here it is. Well, let's see. So that one just came off. So imagine this was a whole entire wreath. And then you can color just the gold. And you could do on the rims if you wanted to, or you could just do this part. So I'm just going to color these real quick, the designs. But all of these are easy to color because their impression depth is like deep. And so that's something, it makes it really tricky to color things that aren't deep because it just gets on the background. So then imagine that this was wrapping paper, and then you put it on and then you can still see the wrapping paper through. So it's kind of like a fun, imagine the gift, you know. I should have wrapped a little gift to show you, but I didn't. But anyway, so that's a fun little technique, and you could do that with sealing wax or hot glue. Okay, are there any other questions on hot glue seals? I'm gonna unplug my hot glue gun really quick and plug in a sealing wax glue gun. So 1 second, put your questions in the comments while I'm doing this. Sorry. Okay, got a glue gun with sealing wax. Let's get this plugged in and going. And I'm also going to plug in the white one. Okay, so let's move this over to the side. I'm going to get my spoon heated up here. Okay, so the next method that I want to show you is called cut and press. And I'm going to plug one more glue gun in. Sorry, I only have one outlet. Okay, I'm back. I just wanted to get that white plugged in. Okay, so what this method is let me see if I brought up a little example. So let me show you a couple examples of this. Okay, so this is what we're talking about next. So it's like, how do you get certain parts of the seal to be certain colors and other parts a different color? Or for this example, it's the same thing. We've got two colors going on here. So for me, there is a method called pour and scrape. And I'm going to type in okay, there's a lady named Rita that's on Instagram and TikTok, and she lives here in Utah, actually, the same place I live, and she's so nice. But she has mastered this technique of pouring and scraping, and I cannot do it, so I do cut and press instead. So I'm cutting these little things either with scissors or with an X-Acto knife. So the X-Acto knife, like these ones are very detailed, so that's like a little more involved, but still really fun. But a good one, this one is a really easy one for this technique because it's just 4 little cuts and a really simple design. So something like this would not be a good one to choose because it's so intricate, it would be really hard to cut all the way around that. But like something like this Mickey Mouse, like that wouldn't be too bad to have to cut that out. So that's what I'm kind of looking for, is just more simplistic. This one's like in between, it would probably be in this realm where it'd be an X-Acto knife, not scissors. But more simple stamps work really great for this. So what you would do first is you would press your first color that you would want it to be. So it could be any color you want. So I'm going to use this one since I already had pressed it. And then what you'll do is you'll just use scissors and you're going to cut out the design. And all these extra little pieces we can save and remelt. I just have little bags of wax that I can use for basically like little beads that you can remelt again. So you don't have to throw those away. You can just save them for later. But so then I have this cute little mini envelope, and I'm going to try to, what I want to do is stick it on here so then I can put it in a new color and it will show up like that. But the one thing that's a little bit tricky is, so you put it in, you flip it over, well, it's stuck that time, but a lot of times it will just fall out. So it won't go where you need it to. So what I like to do is, this has been heating up, so the metal's hot, and be careful doing this, is I'll just put my stamp on there for a little while, or I'll put it on a candle warmer, or I have a glass top stove, so sometimes I'll just turn it on and set it on there for just a couple seconds. So I just set it on there briefly, so it's not hot, like it's not burning me or anything, but I can feel that it's warm. And then I'm gonna add this to it and just press it in and kind of hold it for a second. And the heat, the metal being warm, is gonna make it stick, the wax stick. So now I can turn it upside down all I want, and it's not gonna fall out when I don't want it to. So let's see if this wax is, yep, it's warm enough. I'm gonna unplug. Whoops. Sorry, my light got, sorry, I hope that didn't make anyone feel sick with the flashing lights. My light got unplugged. Okay, so from here, what I want to do is just move this out of the way. So we'll see how this comes out color wise. But so green, and then my stamp is good in there, and then I'm just going to press it in. So again, if we were to start this one from the beginning, if we choose a seal, I need another glue stick. So if I did the Mickey Mouse one, that little pieces of wax all over. And these ones take a little bit longer to cool because remember we heated up this stamp. So if this is hot, then it's going to take longer for that to come off. But let's heat that up just a little bit more. It's going to take a minute. It's kind of hot. Okay, let's see if we have any question. Does that melt the little piece or just the sticks in the center? Sorry, April. I'm not sure what you're asking. If you want to unmute and ask me, I'm like a little confused about what you're trying to ask. Okay, so that one came off, and then it's still, this is a sign it's too hot. If I'm pulling it, then yeah, so I just want to leave it and let it cool down. So we might have to come back to that. Let's look at our mouse. Same thing. This was happening. This is interesting because this happened. My son likes to make wax seals, so we were making some this morning, and this happened. The same thing. Where it like, so this works out because then I don't have to cut as much. But this is happening because the wax is so hot, and I pressed down hard enough that it kind of like, this wax is so thin it kind of pulled it off by itself. But that worked out because now I don't have to cut as much. Oh, okay. So April's asking if I put my stamp on the metal thing, is it melting the wax that I attached back to this? So if I put this back on, And no, it shouldn't be hot enough that it's melting the wax into it, just warm enough. Really warm is a better word, warm enough that it will stick without falling out. So let me cut this and we'll do a little Mickey Mouse. And I know, I think a lot of people are like, an X-Acto knife seems so tedious, but actually I felt like it was easier than scissors, just because you have a little more control. But I didn't bring mine with me up here, so. But that's always an option for getting like the little details. So then we have our Mickey, and let me grab this white wax. And something that you'll notice if you make a bunch of these, like this is gonna start to be warm on its own where you're not gonna have to heat it up at all. Like it's already feeling pretty warm to me, so I would just kind of press it in. And then I test it, it's not gonna fall out, so then I'll make the seal. So I'm gonna pour it over here a little bit. And then I'll press it in. And then just wait, and let's see if this one has cooled down enough to come off. Yes. It was very warm. Yeah, so it was too hot. I shouldn't have pulled it off, but I did. So then it comes out like that. So I'm not like super in love with these colors, but it's still fun. But so when I've made this some with this stamp before, I've done a white envelope on like pink or red. I did them for Valentine's Day, and those turned out super cute. And you could even put a little bit of gold right on the heart. So then that stands out a little bit. So that's super fun. Okay, let me know if you have questions on that. Little process. And the next one, let's see what time we got. Okay, let me know in the comments, would you guys rather go over like marbling, or the other thing I had to show you was how to make little flowers like this. So this is all made of sealing wax. So put in the comments which you're most interested to learn a little bit more about, because we have about 15-20 minutes left. Let's see if this one's done. That one came off easier. So that turned out super cute. So it's a really fun technique to get a few different colors. And I mean, you could get really elaborate with this, and I don't. Like the most I've ever done are like these ones that have 2 colors. But usually I mean 3 colors, but I usually just do 2. And I think it's really fun. So that's a fun little technique. Okay, we have, what do you guys want to do? We've got flowers, and a few marbling. Okay, let's try to do both. Let me show you the flowers real quick. Okay, I think this green is still warm enough. Yep. Okay. So I kind of went ahead and started making a flower. So I'll walk you through the process, and then we'll keep working with the one that I've already made. So what you need for this, so this is what we're making. The first thing that you'll need is a wax seal for the base. So I made this out of vellum, and I just used a blank stamp. I didn't grab one of my blanks out. So I used one of these for the base. And then that's kind of where I build the flower on. And I did vellum, but you could do green, or you could do the orange, like the color of the flower, and that would work fine too. So that's the base. And then that way, when you pull the sticker off, you can actually like stick it and it will be flat. The first one I made didn't have that on the bottom, so you couldn't actually attach it. So that was a good improvement. The other thing that you'll need is one of these like spatulas. I think this is technically like a frosting thing for cake, but like an art spatula or something like this, so that you can pour the wax and smooth it out, so we get a nice flat thing like this to work with. Is the flower heavy? How would you use it? It's not heavy, but what I would do with it, like what I'm planning to do with it, is just have it on like an envelope like that. Or I think it'd be cute to put it on a little gift tag and then tie it to a gift, or like on top of like a small gift. Could just be sitting on top. But yeah, something like that. Okay, so let me show you how to do this. So we're gonna just do some back and forth like this of the wax. And we want kind of a lot. And then I'm gonna pull it this way, but I don't want it to be too thin of wax because the way we're attaching it is with more wax. And so as we're attaching it, it can melt, it will remelt the wax. So if it's too thin, it won't work well. So it needs to be a little bit thicker. So this is gonna cool, and I'm gonna grab my orange glue gun and get that heated up. Okay, that's heating up. So I did this earlier with the orange, but what I did to get the circles, I just have this 5/8 inch punch. And so then I can just punch it and it makes a little circle shape for me. And that seemed easier. Oh, it's all stuck in there. So then what I do is I would take this and use my little scissors and just cut off the edges a little bit, like make it kind of like petal-like. And then I kind of do the top a little bit wavy. And I've been doing the non-shiny side up, and then I bend it. Like I just use my fingers to kind of shape it, and it will kind of hold the shape like this. And then from here, I'd start adding the petals. So for the leaves, I didn't use the circle punch. I just cut out a little rectangle like this. And then I shaped it into a leaf. So, I mean, you could get really creative with how you want your leaf to look, or the petals, like the petals could be more like this shape, or, you know, it's however you want to shape it. And then to attach the leaves, I'm going to show you how I attach them and how I'm going to attach this all together. But let me see if this wax is hot enough. The orange wax is still heating up. So I'm using the same color wax as these, and I have a few that are already made. Let's see if I have enough to finish it off. So 1, 2, 3, so I need one more to do the top. So I kind of choose the thicker parts to do the circle punch so that it won't melt. And then I'll just cut those little pieces and kind of try to make it a little petal-like on the top. And then bend it, and then it's ready. I kind of put my nail in that one, so I probably don't do that. Just bend it a little bit. Tilly asked if my art spatula is flexible. This one's a pretty thick one. I think this one is for frosting, so it's not that flexible. It's kind of thick, but I was looking for just a regular like metal art, like a metal one that people use for painting, you know, and I didn't see it, so that's why I ended up with this. So I think just a regular art spatula would work fine. I've even done it with plastic art spatulas and it still spread it good. Oh, thank you. Someone said it's called an offset spatula. Thank you so much. That's what it's called. Okay, so let's see, our wax is warm enough. So what I'll do here is I'm just gonna put a teeny tiny little dot of wax, and then I'm just setting that on top of it, and just wait a second as it's cooling. I'm just gonna do another one and kind of overlay it. And you just kind of work your way around. And so there's no set number of petals. Like you could get really elaborate with this and do really tiny petals and a lot of them, or you can make them bigger like mine so that there's not as many. But if you'll notice, let me lift this up. I don't know if you can see this, but can you see that it's melting in the center of this petal? So that was a little bit too thin when I scraped it. So you just want to try to get thicker, and it's still going to look fine. But that's why you want it to be a little bit thicker, is so that it won't melt through the petals or the leaves. So I attached the leaves the same way, but I just did it to the bottom of the sill. So I just did a green blob, and then I put all 3 leaves into it. So then from here, I would let it cool, and I made this earlier so it would be dry, but this is just a hot glue dot. So I just did like a teeny tiny dot of hot glue. So this was the hot glue. I did it like that, and I let it cool, and then I used my Krylon gold leafing pen and just colored it gold and let it dry. And so you could do it, you wouldn't have to do this gold thing. Like if you had yellow sealing wax or a color that you think would be pretty in there, that would totally work. But what I'm going to do to attach it is just put a tiny little bit in. And I'm actually, if I can find my tweezers, I'm going to try to put it in like this. And put it in. And then from here, where did my other one go? So you'll notice I have a little bit of wax coming out from the edge. So once it cooled, I had that same thing on this one. So what I did is I just used my X-Acto knife and just went just a little swipe, and it got that little excess amount of wax off really easily. So, but yeah, that's how you make them. That's was super quick, but they're not hard to do. And I got this idea. I saw someone making clay earrings, and I was like, that's so pretty. I wonder if I could make that out of wax. So that's kind of how it started. And I just think they're so fun. So I hope to make more of these with different like flower shapes and stuff. But so that's the general gist of how to make them. And we still have some time, so let's get into marbling really quick so that we can talk about that too. Got my candle going, and I'm gonna get all this. Okay, good example of what happens when you put your wax over the candle. That's yucky. I'm gonna have to heat it up again to clean it off. So I'm not worried about that. I just have to heat it up and then I can clean it off again. Okay. So I have orange plugged in. I'm gonna get white plugged in really quick. Let me see if it's warm enough and maybe it'll work. I'm gonna plug it in for just a second. Okay, so with marbling, I like marbling. I think you get better marbling effect in a spoon, like it's a prettier marble. We cut this one up, but you can see just naturally it's getting like these beautiful mixing of colors. With glue guns, it's a little harder, almost impossible to achieve something like that, but you can still do some cool mixing with the glue gun. So let me get a couple stamps and we will try it. So you want to have two, for this marbling with a glue gun, it's obviously going to marble if you do two colors. They're just going to naturally marble as they're heating up. But if you want to marble it in these other ways, you're going to need two glue guns with two colors. So I have my orange. I'm going to grab the white again. So there's a few different ways that you can do this marbling. So the first we would just do, I need to grab a white stick. We would do, so one squeeze of the white, and I could just do a tiny drop of the orange and use a toothpick. I'm out of toothpicks, so I'm going to use this end of a paintbrush. But you would just kind of mix it up like that and then press it. I'm going to press it with one like this. So that's one way to do it. Another fun way, if you have two glue guns, would be to pour them together. So kind of like a half and half situation. So we would do something like that. It's a little hard to squeeze with if you're with your non-dominant hand. So that's one way to do it. Or the last way, sorry, I'm right by my stove, so the cords are dinging on the glass. So the last way would be to do your white. I like to do the lighter color as the base, and then this one more like a splatter. So you're just kind of, oops, putting it in and then press. So let's look at these. And I'm going to see if I can get my spoon cleaned off. And then I'll show you a couple techniques with the spoon. So if you missed yesterday, you just heat up the wax and you're using a paper towel or napkin to just make sure you're not touching the metal because it is hot and can burn you. You just want to get all of that out. And you can see all that gunk came off the bottom, so it just needed to be like reheated. There was wax mixed in with the soot. Okay. And sometimes, I don't know if you can tell, but there's like a little bit of residue still in here. So if I was being really picky, I could put it back on and then totally get it clean, but this is gonna work great for our purposes. I'm not gonna put that on quite yet. Okay, so let's look at how these turned out. So this is the marble with like a toothpick, or I used the end of a painting brush. So you can see that there is a little bit of marbling, but it's only like where we make it happen. This one was our half and half. So that one can be cute and can be fun depending on what you're making. I want to do some that has for Valentine's next year that are a heart and half, like the heart and half, I think would be really cute. But I think this could be really fun. And then the splatter one is a much more organic looking. So it's technically not really that marbled, it's more splattery, but it's a fun technique. So let me show you a couple with the spoon. So this is a technique that I did not come up with, but I learned it from thanks Annette. She had to head out early. Let me write her name, Catherine Hastings and Co. Okay, so I don't know if you guys follow Catherine or not, and she goes by K, but she is very creative with her wax seals. And so this was a technique that I saw her do. And so if you like this technique, then you just need to go look at her videos on Instagram because they're insane. So what you're basically doing here is we're just gonna do some white in the bottom, and you could do that part with beads if you wanted, and then we'll do some orange, and we're just gonna make like concentric circles with the wax. And when she does it, she does like layers and layers and multiple colors, and it's just beautiful. But I'm just giving you the idea of how it works. And I think that will be the last one. So you can see how there's kind of circles going on there. And then you can choose your stamp. I'm gonna get one that's actually a little cold from my ice pack so that so we don't have to wait as long for it to cool. Okay, so then when we pour it, I want to pour so that I keep those circles intact. So I'm gonna like move, I guess I needed a few more in there. But you can see it doesn't look like there's much happening, but then once I press it, the colors kind of change as you press and the wax moves. So these are kind of light colors, so it will work a little bit better like with a red and white or a navy and a white, but it's the general idea. Let me put this back on and let me put in a few colors. So the other thing with marbling is just contrast is the most important thing. So if I put in this orange and navy and white, I should get some cool marbling. So let me see if we can get that melted. And that finished really quick. So not quite the effect I was going for. I think I needed more circles, but you'll be able to see, like, you can kind of see that circle right there. But if you do it enough times of alternating colors, then you can get more. You'll be able to see more of it in the press. Okay, so this is melting. Let me know what questions you guys have. There's just a few minutes left, so I want to make sure I got all the questions. Let me look. Oh, we had our two from earlier. Flattening with a string. So let me show you this one while our wax is melting. I think you get the best marbling in the spoon. So that's all I'm showing here is just how the contrasting colors, the way it melts, it's just going to make a beautiful marbling effect. without you having to do anything really, and then you just have to pour it and press it. Okay, so this was one of our questions from earlier. So the question is, if you didn't catch the workshop yesterday, is how to get, this is if you pour the wax right on the string, you're gonna get this kind of the wax coming in and you can see the wax or the ribbon through it, versus how do you make it look like this? And so the trick is here is to do a first pour. So I'm gonna do it in orange because that's what's heated up right now, but just put a little bit of wax. And then I'm using a blank stamp and I'm gonna press. And I'm gonna hold it because the wax or the string has a shape to it, I guess. I don't know how to word that exactly, but so I have to hold it down so it will like stay in place. And then if I pull this off, doesn't want to come off because I'm a little early. It's still too hot. We gotta wait just a second. But I'll pull it off and then I'll put another stamp on top of it. So let's let that cool. And then the other question was how much wax to use. And it's really about how hot your wax is. So this wax is really hot. So I could get away with just doing that much. That's like a dime size. And I think it'll spread enough. I maybe could have used a little bit more that it will work. But I think you're going about that range. So it's not as large as your stamp. It's not as big as a quarter, maybe nickel size, about that. And then you'll press. If you're having problems with getting like a good circle, or if you're having problems where like this situation is happening, then I would just use a little bit more wax so it's easier to get a circle. When I first started, I used like more wax than I needed to, just because it was easier for me to center it with a little bit more wax. And this wax is just super hot. We can tell because it's running everywhere. You can also tell because there's tons of little bubbles in it. So I need to unplug it. Get another stamp. All those bubbles, yeah, it's way too hot. Okay, so I hope that helps with the how much wax to use. You're going like nickel size is about right. So let's look at this one. So I pulled that off. So this is not looking very pretty, but that's just flattening it out. So we have a nice surface to make our seal to pour that onto. April said, so overheated wax can cause bubbles. Yes, yeah, totally. So what's happening is the glue gun's boiling the wax. You know, when you boil water, it's bubbly. That's what's happening. So if you're getting little bubbles like this, or sometimes you get bigger ones, let me see, in the hot glue, I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's some bigger bubbles in here. It's a little bit hot. These bubbles in the hot glue tend to stay inside the hot glue, so it's okay once you color it. But a lot of times with the sealing wax, it's like visible, so you don't want that. Yeah, so just unplug the glue gun like I did. I should have unplugged it a little bit sooner, and then it'll get a little bit cooler. So even here, it's a little bit cooler, but it's still really hot because you want it to be billowy and kind of come up, and it's just like flattening. So the next step with this, after we have that, we would just pour our normal amount of wax on, and then we press it over the top. And so sometimes you still might get a little bit of that situation where it's like going over the string, but it's going to be more flat and you're not going to be able to see the strings through the seal that way. And I think we're out of time, and my candle is being so slow to melt all of my wax. But just the idea here, just think contrasting. I kind of talked about this yesterday, but if you're choosing like these two colors to marble, it's not going to look good. Like they're not going to marble well because they're the same tone. So you're not going to be able to see the difference. So you want to go with a dark and a light, a dark and a light, you know, dark and light. Or just use white with any of these colors and it would work out pretty well. So we'll see. I'll answer a few more questions and it might be ready, but I don't know. Let's see. Would you say it's best to keep glue guns separate from colors, so at least 2 guns. I tried white and tried moving to glue and messed up a lot. Yeah, so I usually, for me, if I were using the glue gun method, I would get, yeah, 1 glue gun that's just for hot glue, and then 1 could be for all your other colors, or 1 for white and hot glue, and 1 for all the other colors. Because it is really hard to go back to white once you've done like a color, especially if you've done a dark color like black or navy or red. It's really hard to get it back to white. Like there's traces of it through like tons and tons of sealing wax sticks. So if you really get into wax seal making, I would do that. Get a few different ones. Are there any other questions that you guys have? Let me switch my camera really quick so you can see me again. There. Okay, but I'm right by the windows behind me, so it looks not good. Let me come over here. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming to the workshop. If you have more questions that I didn't answer, then just send me an email and I'm happy to answer that for you. Or even I can make a video and post it to my Instagram, because if you have that question, other people will probably have that same question too. And so don't forget about the giveaway. If you post your stories, only like 7 people did it. So there's really good chances for you to win it. And it's super awesome. It's like $100 worth of product in a little kit. So definitely enter that. And then the last thing I was going to say was, oh, if you want, you can join my Wax Seal Club. So it's going to be opening again in August, and it's every other month. You get a unique stamp. Let me show you. So the stamp from the last box was this one. So it was this little leafy fern. So you get one of those and you get 3 sealing wax colors. So if you start to get into wax seals and you're like, I love this, I try to choose stamps that are hard to, like ones that you can't find anywhere else or very hard to find. The one that's coming in August is one that I designed, so you won't be able to get it anywhere else because it's a custom designed stamp. So that will be really fun. So yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And if you have questions, just let me know. I'm going to send out the recordings tomorrow morning for both days, and you'll have access to those indefinitely as long as you have the links to access them. So anyway, thanks so much for being here, and I hope to see you guys in the Wax Seal Club in the future.